When Pastor David buried Emmanuel beneath his altar, he believed the boy's cries would die with the soil. But the dead do not forget. And now, Emmanuel has returned, not just as a spirit, but as something far more terrifying. Hello, my dear friends, and welcome once again to Tales by Larinzy. This is the home of inspiring life stories, stories that teach, warn, heal, and guide us in the journey of life. If you are new here, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support means the world to me and helps us reach even more people who need these lessons of life. Pastor David began seeing him everywhere. At first, it was just flashes. A small figure in the corner of his eye, gone when he turned. A shadow moving across the stage during prayer. But then it became clearer. The first time David truly saw Emmanuel's face after that night was 3 weeks later. He'd been conducting a routine blessing for new members. 17 people stood before the altar, hands raised, eyes closed. The worship team played softly, and David moved down the line, placing his palm on each forehead, whispering prayers of anointing. When he reached the 9th person, a young woman named Grace, he placed his hand on her brow and opened his mouth to pray. But the words died in his throat. Behind her, visible through the gap between her arm and body, stood Emmanuel. Not transparent, not ghostly, solid, real. The boy's choir robe was caked with dried mud, torn at the shoulder. His small hands hung at his sides, fingers twitching slightly as if trying to form words. David's hand trembled on Grace's forehead. "Pastor," she whispered, eyes still closed, "are you okay?" He couldn't answer, couldn't breathe. Emmanuel's lips moved silently. "Help me." David stumbled backward, nearly falling. The music stopped. Hundreds of eyes turned toward him. I need a moment," he stammered, and practically ran off the stage. In the bathroom, he splashed cold water on his face, gripping the sink so hard his knuckles went white. When he finally looked up at the mirror, his reflection stared back, alone. But then, slowly, a second reflection appeared. Emmanuel, standing behind him, covered in dirt. David spun around. Nothing. He looked back at the mirror. The boy was still there, watching. His eyes were hollow, sunken, like he'd been underground for weeks. "You're not real," David whispered to the reflection. Emmanuel's mouth opened, and though no sound came from behind him, David heard the voice clearly in his mind. "You made me real. You gave me to the altar. I didn't mean to. But you did." David's heart slammed against his ribs. "What do you want from me?" The reflection smiled sadly, a child's smile that should have been innocent but was twisted by something ancient and hungry. And then it was gone. David stood there for 10 minutes, staring at his own terrified face in the mirror before he could force himself to return to the sanctuary. The weeks that followed were a descent into private hell. David would be mid-conversation with a church elder and see Emmanuel sitting in a chair across the room. He'd be driving home and catch sight of the boy in his rearview mirror, sitting in the back seat. Once, during a television interview about Destiny Fire Ministries' explosive growth, the camera panned across the congregation, and there, sitting in the 3rd row, was Emmanuel, staring directly at the lens. No one else could see him. David checked. He asked people if they'd noticed the boy in the choir robe. They looked at him strangely and said, no. He stopped sleeping. When he closed his eyes, he saw the altar room, smelled the incense, heard Prophet Ezekiel's voice. "The altar is satisfied." Ruth noticed everything. "David, you've barely eaten in 3 days," she said one evening, watching him push food around his plate. They sat in their penthouse dining room, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lagos's glittering skyline. The table could seat 12. Tonight it felt impossibly large and empty. "I'm not hungry." "You're never hungry anymore. You don't sleep. You won't tell me what's wrong." Her voice cracked. "We used to share everything." David wanted to scream, wanted to grab her shoulders and tell her the truth, that he'd murdered a child, that the boy's ghost was stalking him, that something ancient and evil had marked him. Instead, he said, "The ministry is growing faster than we expected. It's overwhelming sometimes." It was true, in a way. Destiny Fire Ministries had exploded since Emmanuel's disappearance. They'd gone from 5,000 members to 50,000 in 3 months. Churches across West Africa wanted David to come and bring the anointing. Politicians requested private prayers. Celebrities posted photos at Destiny Fire Ministries services. Prophet Ezekiel called it the blessing. David knew it was something else. Blood money, soul currency. "David," Ruth reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm your wife. Whatever it is, we face it together." He looked into her eyes, beautiful, trusting, full of love, and felt something break inside him. "I can't tell you," he whispered. "If I tell you, it'll destroy you too." "You're scaring me." "I'm scared too." That night, Ruth cried herself to sleep beside him. David lay awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting for Emmanuel to appear. He didn't have to wait long. At 3:47 a.m., David's eyes snapped open. The room was freezing. His breath misted in the air despite the tropical heat outside. The air conditioning wasn't on. He sat up slowly, his heart already pounding, and saw him, Emmanuel, standing at the foot of the bed. Not a shadow, not a reflection. Really there. The boy's skin had a grayish pallor, like meat left too long in the sun. His choir robe hung in tatters, revealing dirt-caked arms and chest. But it was his eyes that made David's blood freeze. They were completely black, as if someone had filled the sockets with oil. David couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't even scream. Emmanuel tilted his head, studying him. When he spoke, his voice was wrong, too deep, layered with something ancient. "Why, Pastor?" "I'm sorry," David choked out, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know. I didn't understand what they were asking. You said Jesus loved me." "He does." "Then why did you unalive me?" The words hit like physical blows. David's mouth opened, but no sound came. What could he possibly say? How could he explain that ambition had blinded him? That he'd been too proud, too desperate for success to see the evil he was serving? Emmanuel stepped closer. The temperature dropped further. David could see frost forming on the windows. Closer. The boy's footsteps made no sound on the carpet. Closer, until he was inches from David's face. Up close, David could see the dirt packed under his fingernails, could smell earth and decay, could see small roots tangled in his hair. "The altar is hungry again, Pastor." "No, please. It's always hungry. You fed it once. Now it expects more." "I won't do it. I'll never do it again." Emmanuel's blackened eyes bored into his. "You don't have a choice. The altar chose you, and it always collects its debt." His small hand reached out, impossibly cold, and touched David's chest. Pain exploded through him. It felt like ice water injected directly into his veins, spreading from his heart outward. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't... "Next time," Emmanuel whispered, "it will take someone you love." David screamed, and screamed, and, "David, David, wake up." He was being shaken, hard. His eyes flew open to see Ruth's terrified face, inches from his, her hands gripping his shoulders. "You were screaming," she said, her voice high and panicked. "You wouldn't stop screaming." David stared around wildly. Bright morning sunlight streamed through the windows. The room was warm. No Emmanuel, no frost, just Ruth, terrified and confused, and the sweat-soaked sheets beneath him. "What's happening to you?" she whispered. David looked at his wife. This woman who'd stood beside him through everything, who believed in him, who loved him, and felt the walls finally crumble. "I need help," he said, his voice broken and small. "Ruth, I need help." "Help with what?" "David, please, you're scaring me." He opened his mouth to tell her everything, and his phone rang. They both stared at it. 5:47 a.m. Who would call this early? David picked it up with trembling hands. "Pastor David." The voice was panicked, barely recognizable. It was Jerome, one of the church security guards. "You need to come to the church, now. Something's happened." "What? What's happened?" "It's... Pastor, there's someone in the sanctuary, just standing there. We can't get him to move or speak. And Pastor..." "What?" "He looks like Emmanuel, the boy who went missing." The phone slipped from David's fingers. David broke every traffic law getting to Destiny Ministries. Ruth sat beside him in the car, silent and white-faced. He'd told her only that there was an emergency at the church. She didn't ask questions. The look on his face had been enough. When they arrived, the main doors stood open. Inside, David could see a crowd gathered in the sanctuary, security guards, early morning intercessors, the worship team who'd arrived for rehearsal. They all stood in a semicircle, staring at something. David pushed through them, Ruth close behind. And there, standing directly in front of the altar, was a boy. He looked about 12 years old, wore a tattered choir robe. His feet were bare and caked with dirt. His hair was matted. His skin had a strange, waxy quality. But it wasn't Emmanuel. David's knees nearly buckled with relief and confusion. "Who is he?" Ruth whispered. No one answered. No one knew. David approached slowly. "Son, are you okay? Where are your parents?" The boy didn't respond, didn't even blink, just stared straight ahead at the altar with those strange, empty eyes. David reached out to touch his shoulder. The boy's head snapped toward him with inhuman speed. "The altar remembers," he said in a voice too deep for his small frame. "One was planted. Now more must grow." Then his eyes rolled back, showing only whites, and he collapsed. The boy was taken to Lagos University Teaching Hospital. David's phone rang. Prophet Ezekiel. "You've been ignoring my calls," the old man said without preamble. "I've been busy. I heard about the boy at your church. That's why I'm calling." A pause. "David, you need to perform another dedication." David's blood ran cold. "No. The altar is restless. It gave you power, David. Gave you everything you have. But power has a price. You know this. I won't do it again. I can't. You don't understand. If you don't feed it, it will feed itself. It will take what it wants, and it always wants what you love most." David thought of Ruth, of their 3-year-old daughter, Joy, currently staying with her grandmother, of his congregation. "What have I done?" he whispered. "You made a covenant," Prophet Ezekiel said simply. "Covenants can't be broken, David, only fulfilled. The altar will have its due. The question is whether you control who it takes, or whether it chooses for you." The line went dead. David didn't go home that night. He couldn't face Ruth. Instead, he drove aimlessly through Lagos, praying for the first time in weeks, really praying, not the performative prayers he spoke from the pulpit. "God, if you're real," he wept, "if you're listening, I need you. I've done something terrible. I've served something evil. Please, please show me a way out." No answer came, just the sound of traffic and his own ragged breathing. Meanwhile, Ruth couldn't sleep. Her husband was falling apart, and he wouldn't tell her why. The boy at the church, the nightmares, the way David flinched at shadows. Something was very wrong. At 2 a.m., she went to David's study in their home. He kept it locked, but she knew where he hid the key. Inside, she turned on the light and looked around. Books on ministry and leadership lined the shelves, photos of their wedding, Joy's birth, church milestones, everything normal. Then she saw it, a locked drawer in his desk. It took her 20 minutes to find the key, taped under the desk's bottom panel. When she finally opened the drawer, she found a leather-bound journal. David's handwriting filled every page. She started reading, and her world shattered. June 15th. Prophet Ezekiel says the ministry needs spiritual fortification. He's asked me to bring a child for special dedication. I don't understand, but I trust him. God has used him to bring so much blessing. June 28th. I selected Emmanuel from the choir. He's perfect. I told him it was a special honor. He was so excited. July 1st. What happened tonight? I can't write it. Can't even think it. But Emmanuel is gone. They told me it was necessary, that the altar demanded it, that this is how great men of God are made. They told me not to worry, that his parents won't remember a single thing. They will declare their son missing without any memory that links the incident to me. July 3rd. The church has grown by 3,000 members since the dedication. Prophet Ezekiel was right. The blessing is real. But I see Emmanuel everywhere. What have I done? The journal fell from Ruth's hands. She stood there, trembling, as the full horror of it washed over her. Her husband, the man she loved, the father of her child, the pastor thousands called a man of God, was a murderer, had sacrificed a child for power, for success, for a ministry. Ruth's scream echoed through the empty house. David came home at dawn to find Ruth waiting in the living room. The journal sat on the coffee table between them. Ruth, don't. Her voice was ice. Don't say my name with that mouth. That mouth that prayed over a child you were about to kill. I didn't know what they were going to do. You knew. She was on her feet, shaking with rage and grief. You wrote it, David. Special dedication. The altar demanded it. You knew. I was weak. I was stupid. You wanted power. You wanted fame. You wanted people to worship you. Tears streamed down her face. And you murdered a child to get it. David fell to his knees. I'm sorry. God, Ruth, I'm so sorry. I've been living in hell since that night. I see him everywhere. He comes to me. Good. Ruth's voice was cold. I hope he haunts you forever. I hope you never sleep again. I hope... She stopped. Her hand went to her mouth. What? David asked, terrified of the look on her face. Joy, Ruth whispered. Where's Joy? She's with your mother. She's safe. The boy at the hospital said it. One was planted. Now more must grow. Ruth's eyes widened in horror. It wants more children. And you said it. Emmanuel told you. It will take someone you love. They stared at each other. Then both ran for the door. Ruth's mother lived 40 minutes away in Lecky. They made it in 20. David's car screaming through red lights and around corners. Ruth called her mother's phone again and again. No answer. Maybe she's just sleeping, David said, but his voice shook. At 7 a.m., she's always up by 6. Always. They pulled up to the modest 2-story house. Everything looked normal. The gate was closed. Lights were off. Too quiet. David jumped out of the car before it fully stopped. He vaulted the gate and ran to the front door. Locked. Mama chi din ma, he shouted, pounding on the door. Mama chi din ma. Nothing. He picked up a garden rock and smashed a window, reached through, unlocked the door, and ran inside. Ruth was right behind him. Joy! Joy! The house was silent. They ran upstairs to Joy's room, the guest bedroom that Ruth's mother had converted into a princess wonderland for her granddaughter. Pink walls, stuffed animals, A small bed with butterfly sheets. Empty. No, Ruth moaned. No, no, no. Mama Chidama's room. David ran down the hall. The master bedroom door was ajar. He pushed it open. Ruth's mother lay on the bed, peaceful, as if sleeping. But she was cold. David checked her pulse. Nothing. Ruth, call an ambulance. But Ruth wasn't listening. She was staring at something on the nightstand. A note. Written in crayon, Joy's favorite blue crayon, in handwriting that wasn't Joy's. The altar is hungry. Come to where it all began. Come alone. Or she joins Emmanuel. David stood outside Prophet Ezekiel's compound at midnight. Ruth was at the hospital, staying with her mother's body, making arrangements, answering police questions about the apparent heart attack. David had told her to stay there, told her he'd handle this. She'd grabbed his arm, her eyes wild. You can't go alone. Call the police. Call someone. The note said T. The note said to come alone. They took our daughter, David. To hell with the note. And if I bring the police, they'll kill her. You know they will. These people, they're not human. Not anymore. He'd cupped her face. I have to do this. I have to fix what I broke. Now, standing outside the compound's gate, he felt the weight of every choice that had brought him here. The gate was open, waiting. He walked through. The compound was silent, the main house dark. But he knew where to go. Behind the house, down the path, through the garden, to the underground chamber. The door was open. Candlelight flickered from below. David descended the stairs. The altar room looked exactly as it had 3 months ago. The stone altar in the center. The symbols carved into the floor. The smell of incense and decay. Prophet Ezekiel stood beside the altar, hands clasped, smiling gently. And there, lying on the altar, was Joy, his beautiful 3-year-old daughter, still breathing, eyes closed, unconscious but alive. David, Prophet Ezekiel said warmly, You came. Let her go, David said, his voice steady despite his terror. Take me instead. It doesn't work like that. The altar doesn't want you, David. You're already marked, already owned. The old man ran his hand over Joy's hair almost tenderly. It wants innocence. It wants potential. It wants to consume what could have been beautiful. I'll do anything, please. Not my daughter. Your daughter? Prophet Ezekiel laughed. David, you lost the right to call her that when you brought Emmanuel here. You broke the natural order. You gave a child to ancient darkness. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? What do you want? I want you to understand. The prophet walked around the altar, still touching Joy's small form. This isn't evil, David. It's older than evil. It's the original covenant. Before churches and crosses and salvation theology, there was only power and blood. The altar and the sacrifice. The strong and the consumed. You're insane? Am I? Look what the altar gave you. 3 months ago, you were nobody. Now you're famous. Rich. Influential. Politicians seek your counsel. Your church is the fastest growing in Africa. He leaned close. You loved it, David. Don't pretend you didn't. You loved the power. David couldn't deny it. The shame burned through him. So here's your choice, Prophet Ezekiel continued. Walk away. Let the altar take Joy. Keep your power, your ministry, your empire. Grieve publicly. Ruth will forgive you eventually. Or, he paused, complete what you started. Fully commit. Give yourself to the altar. Become what I am, and I'll let Joy go. You're lying. I never lie. The altar doesn't permit it. Accept the covenant fully, and she lives. Reject it, and she dies. David looked at his daughter. Her chest rose and fell slowly. She looked peaceful, like she was having good dreams. He thought of Emmanuel, of the terror in that child's eyes, the betrayal. He thought of Ruth, of her face when she'd read the journal, the way she'd looked at him, like he was a monster. Maybe he was, but he could stop being one. "There's a third option," David said quietly. "Oh," David pulled out his phone, pressed a button. From his pocket came a voice. "So here's your choice. Walk away. Let the altar take joy." He'd been recording. Prophet Ezekiel's face darkened. "That was foolish. I sent it to Ruth, to the church elders, to the press." David's voice was steady now. "It's over, Ezekiel. The police are already on their way. I called them before I came in. They're surrounding the compound right now. And there's one more thing." David pulled out a jerry can he'd hidden behind the stairs on his way down, started pouring gasoline on the floor. "This altar, this chamber, it burns tonight." "No!" Prophet Ezekiel lunged at him. David swung the jerry can, smashing it across the old man's face. Gasoline splashed everywhere. The prophet stumbled back, screaming. David ran to the altar, grabbed Joy. She was limp in his arms but breathing. Above them he could hear shouts. Police, sirens. Prophet Ezekiel was on his feet, blood streaming from his nose, eyes wild. "You can't destroy it. The altar is eternal. It will follow you. It will take everything you love, everything you—" David pulled out a lighter. "Maybe," he said, "but not tonight." He flicked it and dropped it. Fire exploded across the chamber floor. David ran for the stairs, Joy clutched tight against his chest. Behind him, Prophet Ezekiel's screams filled the air, whether from pain or rage. David couldn't tell. He burst out of the underground chamber just as police swarmed the compound. Hands grabbed him, pulled him away from the entrance. Someone took Joy from his arms, checking her vitals, shouting for an ambulance. The underground chamber was an inferno now. Black smoke poured from the entrance, and from deep below David heard something else, a sound like wind through caverns, like a million voices screaming at once. The altar was burning. 2 officers moved to enter the chamber, to save Prophet Ezekiel, but the heat drove them back. The old man's screams faded, then stopped. David fell to his knees on the grass, watching the fire. Police were shouting at him, asking questions, but he couldn't hear them. Could only stare at the flames consuming the evil he'd served. Then he heard it. A voice. Quiet. A whisper in his ear. "Thank you." He turned. Emmanuel stood beside him, but different now, clean. His choir robe was pristine white. His eyes, once hollow and dark, were bright and peaceful. He looked like a regular child again. "Happy." "Emmanuel," David whispered. The boy smiled, really smiled. "You broke the covenant, Pastor. You chose right. Finally." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "I know." Emmanuel's form began to fade, becoming transparent. "The altar is broken. We can rest now." "We?" And suddenly David saw them. Dozens of children, standing around the compound, some in old-fashioned clothes, some in modern ones, all translucent, all peaceful. Some were smiling, others just looked tired but relieved. Sacrifices, all of them, going back decades, maybe centuries. One by one they began to disappear, fading like morning mist. Emmanuel was the last to go. "Tell Joy we're proud of her papa," he said, and then he was gone. David's confession, delivered voluntarily to police, every detail spared, made international news. The recording of Prophet Ezekiel sealed it. Authorities excavated the compound and found remains, dozens of children, some recent, some decades old. Prophet Ezekiel's network was exposed, other pastors, politicians, businessmen, all who'd made the same covenant, all who'd fed the altar. 23 people were arrested. More fled the country. David was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, child endangerment, and criminal negligence resulting in death. He pled guilty to everything, refused legal representation, refused to make a defense. "I deserve whatever punishment you give me," he told the judge. "Nothing you do to me could be worse than what I've already done to myself." He was sentenced to 25 years. Ruth divorced him. She took Joy, who'd miraculously survived without injury, and moved to London. Started over, changed their names. Before she left, she visited David once in prison. They sat across from each other, a glass partition between them, and said nothing for 5 minutes. Finally, Ruth spoke. "Joy asks about you." David's eyes filled with tears. "What do you tell her?" "That her papa made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but that he tried to fix it." She paused. "I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if I'll ever forgive you." "You shouldn't." "Maybe not." She stood to leave, then paused. "The other night, Joy said something strange. She said she had a dream about a boy named Emmanuel, said he told her that Papa is a hero." David couldn't speak. "I don't know if you're a hero," Ruth said quietly, "but you saved our daughter. And maybe that's something." She left without looking back. This story reminds us that every choice has a consequence, and some consequences live far longer than we do. Do you think that David can ever pay for his sins? Share your thoughts in the comments. I love reading them. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Tales by Larinzy for more African stories with deep lessons. Your support keeps these stories alive. See you in the next episode.